It'd be halftime.
I'm sure there's some cool.
Oh, yeah, it won't be just like a throwaway to
Yeah.
an acre to fill it.
Yes.
It'll be something
Hey.
interesting. It's not what I had.
Long time no see. Take your seats. Welcome to the PCC Forum Lecture Series. My name is Ashton. For those who don't know me, this is Natalie. We haven't had this meeting before yet, so it's really exciting to see all of you here. Thank you for coming. If you haven't checked it out already, we have snacks and wine over there. So I imagine most people here are familiar with our speakers this evening. So I have suggested a more unconventional introduction. So our speakers this evening were both born in 1950. One in February, the other in September. They're both married. Rick to Yvonne, Brian to Denise. They both have 2 children who are now grown, flourishing adults. Beloved children. Beloved children. They both have had significant mentors in their life. Brian, Thomas Berry, and Rick Sandgroff. They both have been with PCC since its inception, a quarter of a century ago, and they're friends. So without further ado, I'll let Rick come up and begin.
Do I have a mic that is this projecting sound or not? Testing 1, 2, 3. We have one. We do. There we go. Oh, there we go. Great. That'll make a difference, especially with everybody's growth, especially the speakers. Conditions we have. Thank you very much for that introduction, Ashton, for memorizing it. Brian and I both felt that those were the blessings that we wanted to, that we've had in our lives that we wanted to share, marking our biographies. And thanks to both Natalie and Ashton for all you've done in organizing these pieces here. A lot of work goes into that. And thank you all for venturing out into our smoke. Bay Area with our inversion layer, just like a lid on top of us here. But of course, our thoughts are with the tragedies of the Great Fires and to the north and to the south of us, and really surrounded by a kind of apocalyptic atmosphere on many fronts. So I'm going to tonight do something I usually don't. I normally speak with scarcely a look at my notes, well, looking at outline and stuff, but I got only 4 hours of sleep last night. It's partly the air and partly I don't get to do any cardiovascular exercise, which would tire me out enough to get a good night's sleep. And so I don't quite trust my creative lucidity to speak well without attending to my notes fairly closely. I actually probably don't trust myself to have an IQ over 50 at this point. So our title tonight comes from a statement I heard a few years ago. The stars lead us to wonder. And I thought that is a rich statement. It's pregnant with more meanings than immediately might meet the eye. And I I wrote it down on a Post-it in order to contemplate it. I do this sometimes, like just before going out for a walk at the end of the day's work. I will take a Post-it that I've written down some idea or statement that I found evocative and just look at it just before I go out, so I can kind of contemplate it as I'm going for my walk. And I spoke with Brian a few weeks ago. Would you like to speak on this together? Because we can come at the richness of that statement in our different ways, overlapping at the same time as distinct. So I want to begin by pointing out that the word wonder has two distinct meanings, and both of them are deeply relevant to the stars and to us tonight. The first meaning of wonder would be as in, wow, awesome. And the other meaning of wonder would be more like, I wonder. How'd that come about? What am I seeing here? And the first sense has more of that feeling of surprise, even amazement, combined with admiration, fascination, even awe in an encounter with caused by something whose greatness or beauty so impresses itself on us that its sublimity or its sublime quality or its vastness just has that impact on us. So this sense of wonder has more to do with like numinous mystery. And the other sense has to do with the feeling of wanting to know something that has caused it's caused us curiosity and even perplexity. It pertains to an urge to understand a mystery or even solve a mystery, more the way a detective looks at a mystery. So in a way, you could say the last sense of that I just mentioned of wonder has to do with it leads ultimately to the scientific quest, while the first sense gives rise to something more like a religious sense. And how are you doing there, Matt? Is the recording going to work? Or?
We have a live feed and a high quality recording, and the live feed audio is intelligible but not great, so we're going to work on improving that next time, but it's working well enough.
If you want to put it closer here.
It's worth a try.
I don't know if that'll help. I guess if there's a bunch of people in the live feed. So, and it's precisely that bivalent combination of meanings in the wonder aroused by the stars that has played a crucial role in the evolution of humanity's worldviews. And I would say that these two meanings of wonder in relationship to that are evoked by the stars, they serve as lures or attractors. For thousands of years, the stars have represented a kind of luminously charged focus of our intellectual and imaginative capacities. Hannah Arendt, in a book called The Life of the Mind, wrote, it is wonder that sends the scientist on his course, say his or her course, of dispelling ignorance, and that made Einstein say, the eternal mystery of the world is its comprehensibility. What's interesting is the first thing that she sets out is the scientific meaning of more like the mystery that needs to be solved, while the second meaning that of wonder that she is alluded to with the Einstein quote, because Einstein's sense of wonder well, he's kind of bringing the two together. He's talking about the intelligibility of the cosmos, but he's saying that very fact produces a state of amazement, in a sense, at the nature of the cosmos, that it would be in some way responsive to our intelligence. So my basic thesis tonight is that the stars have led us to wonder and to evolve in multiple ways. They not only have evolved into excuse me, evolved into us over 14 billion years. They have, at each major transition of human evolution, from tribal or hunter-gatherer primal societies to the great archaic civilizations, and then the transition from the archaic to the axial breakthrough, and then to the great modern revolution, and even from there to the postmodern. At each of these stages, the stars play a crucial role. And it's the stars, they lead us to wonder, but they also lead us to the archaic, to the axial, to the modern, and to the postmodern. So I think we can start by recognizing just the degree to which the stars help make us human, in the sense that how we observe, how we reflect, how we measure and record, how we model things, how we create paradigms, how we perceive gods, cosmologies, metaphysics, our whole symbolic consciousness, intimately intertwined with the stars and our relationship to them. The stars, they draw forth a series of new cognitive capacities and new cosmologies at each of these transitions, and that these capacities and these new cosmologies are intimately intertwined with new moral sources and capacities. In other words, the stars not only lead us to wonder, they lead us to these various enormous transitions in our cultural evolution and worldviews. They also, I believe, in very complex and subtle but decisive ways, I think they lead us to the good. So we would, if we think back at the very early stages of our humanity, Homo sapiens, we'd say the stars lead us to gaze, to look up, to imaginatively climb, ascend, transcend, to look from above down upon us, to admire and feel awe, and to, in some sense, aspire towards, in some inchoate but instinctive way, towards the stars, towards the infinity that they represent, and they lead us to wonder about, to compare, to calculate, to articulate, and make records, to develop our what Bella calls craft literacy, the early forms of literacy that the major civilizations about 5,000 years ago developed, very much relating to tracking the stars and tracking stars and planets, because they were divine. They were, in some sense, either emanations of the gods, or they were abodes of the gods. They were they were the numinous divine presence. They represented that presence of these astral powers in human life. And if you think now of the great earliest civilizations, how astrally they were oriented. Just the enormous, the monumental architecture that they established in an unprecedented way. The pyramids in both hemispheres, the ziggurats, and at the same time that they were. So at the same time that the archaic experience of the stars was producing it was allowing us to see the movements of the gods and to interpret their will. At the same time that was happening, the stars were also catalyzing our cognitive development, our capacity to rigorously articulate in a form that would be read by others and that could be passed on generation after generation. External memory systems, as Merlin Donald calls it. This might be a good moment to bring out one other, the double meaning of one other word in that phrase that we get from Brian. The stars lead us to wonder. What's the nature of leading? The leader focuses attention, as I am temporarily focusing the group's attention right now for the moment. And we would also say that the leader can focus intention. So both attention and intention, these very early developing capacities in animal evolution that come to such a intense form in human beings. When I think of the leader focusing intention, as in a project or a battle or a movement, think of Martin Luther King, August 1963, in front of the Lincoln Memorial at the March on Washington. He's not only focusing attention, he's focusing intention in a very powerful way. It represents a whole evolution of moral agency that has happened in humanity and that he is able to draw upon as he's speaking. So the leader focuses attention and intention, both cognition and agency, both mind and will. And what I want to suggest tonight, oh, by the way, let me just say what we're doing, how we're structuring this. I'm speaking for half an hour, of which half my time is up, and then I pass it over to Brian, and then he'll do the same, and then we'll probably talk a little bit, both dialogue with each other, because neither of us knows exactly what we're saying tonight, and it'll be kind of fresher than for each of us. And then we'll also then open it up to everyone to join the conversation. So what I want to suggest tonight is that the stars and our relationship to them have constantly played a role, not only in our evolution of cognitive capacities and the development of our cosmologies and metaphysical frameworks, they have also deeply shaped the evolution of our moral agency and our spiritual horizons. Modern philosophy and science definitely recognizes the first role of cognitive advance and shaping our cosmologies and so forth. Modern science and philosophy does not generally recognize the moral dimension of our cosmic horizon has been occluded by the very nature of the modern mind and its disenchantment of the cosmos. And you could say that by its neutralization of the cosmos, by which I mean it neutralizes, meaning it objectifies it, it eliminates the cosmos's autonomous agency. We human beings have agency for the conventional modern mind or mainstream modern mind. The universe, agency, moral aspirations, an interior spiritual dimension are not seen as part of the cosmos. What I'm also wanting to emphasize, and this may be the most surprising thing that I would say, is that even this disenchantment of the cosmos has had moral consequences, some of which have been and are very problematic. No surprise there, as we breathe the consequences of our objectification of the cosmos. But some of which of these consequences have been very important to us as to who we are in the very best sense. Not only did much of the scientific knowledge that has inspired Brian's work and all modern scientists, including the environmental scientists who have been helping to awaken our civilization to what's the state of our planet, but I believe that disenchantment by the modern mind of the starry heavens also has played a role in shaping, in defining some of our defining moral and spiritual capacities as modern and postmodern human beings that are noble, that are intrinsic to who we are. So I'm wanting us to recognize that the stars lead us to wonder in both senses, both the field of intensely stimulated inquiry and cognition, but also as this domain of awe-inspiring luminosity. So let me, in 5 minutes, do a quick thing with the board here. So if we think of the primordial sense of the human relationship to the universe, we would say, lots of you have done courses of being here, are familiar with this diagram. So here's the porous self in the larger world. That's why the dotted line. And then here's where the spiritual and moral dimension, and where intelligence and agency, purpose and meaning, soul and spirit pervade the world, pervade also the human being. There's not a sharp differentiation between them. And in terms of this, of the location of these sources, it's very the land, the water, the spirits, the ancestors, the upper world and the lower world are all intimately, closely intertwined. There's a hovering closeness of myth, as Robert Bellow puts it. And by contrast, when these powerful archaic civilizations emerge with their pyramids, which is supposed to be a little bit more horizontal, of social hierarchy that's divinely sanctioned, with the pharaoh, the king at the top, the high priest and so forth, and the starry heavens and the realm of the gods has started to kind of elevate and be distinguished from the world is still enchanted, but there's been a concentration and an elevation of the divine power into the astral gods, with which the king, the pharaoh, and the higher levels of the hierarchy are in participatory relationship to, and then all the sacred rituals and so forth are mediated through them. Now, by contrast, then you come to the great axial revolution, where you have an utterly, this breakthrough to an experience of the transcendent, with the worlds down here. The human being has a special relationship to the transcendent, but the philosopher, the state, it's happening in Greece and Israel simultaneously in the first millennium BCE, particularly around the 6th century BCE. You have simultaneously in Greece and Israel, India, China, perhaps Persia, individuals, philosophers, sages, mystics, prophets have a special, they are able to access the divine. They don't go through the social hierarchy. Both the social divine and the cosmic divine begin to lower their numinous charge, as it were. The sacred is experienced as something that more and more is seen as transcending the world. This is particularly true. Well, there's forms of it in certain forms of Buddhism, certain forms of Judaism, Christianity. But I want to mention that I want to give the example of the Pythagorean Platonic tradition in Greece, which continues to hold a strong cosmic sacredness, but and order, but the divine principle, the nous, the highest divine principle is one of cosmic order, of reason, and with which the philosopher can participate, it can access. But what happens is that Plato, he has a sense that while this empirical world, the world of our bodies, of our sensory experiences, our passions, etc., is radically inferior to this eternal world here, that the transcendent archetypal domain represents. But and he sees the heavens and the perfect order in the heavens as representing and carrying the divine in a tangible way. There's a real separation between the heavens and the earth in this sense. But he notices, as the major astronomers of the era are recognizing, that the planets are moving in a different way than the stars. That's why they're called planets, means wanderer in Greek. And they slow down sometimes, they stop, they go in the opposite direction from the rest of the stars night after night. And Mercury's doing it right now as we speak. And for Plato, this was a problem, a metaphysical problem, which, because it introduced a disorder into the perfection of the cosmic order. And so he felt this must be an illusion. They must really be, those apparently random wandering movements of the planets must really be reflective of a powerful, a deeper, subtle mathematical order that he called on all future philosophers and astronomers and mathematicians, who for him were all the same category, called on them to solve this problem of the planets and find out what was the actual mathematical order that was informing what seemed to be the chaotic appearances. And that's where that phrase, saving the appearances, comes from, or saving the phenomena. It's to save it on behalf of this divine order from the apparent random movements that were, for Plato, a sign of loss of divinity and imperfection and a kind of blasphemy on the perfection of the cosmic principle. So that Plato sets in motion. It goes, from Plato to Eudoxus and Aristotle and one Hipparchus and one astronomer after another, and philosopher creates new paradigms, Ptolemy being the one that especially establishes a frame of reference that lasts all through the next 1,000, 1,500, almost 2,000 years. And then comes Copernicus and Kepler, who between them basically solved the problem of the planets, recognize that if once we see that the Earth is moving and the planets are actually moving in ellipses rather than in circles, then the problem of the planets is solved. There is a divine simple order. They were both super Platonists, and they both fulfill the Platonic and forbid what they feel is like the Christian imperative of, they've broken out of the state of the fallen ignorance, seen the universal order, the divine order for the first time, really, like realistically, and there's a great sense of exaltation. The modern mind, from that point on, Galileo, Descartes, Newton, the Enlightenment, has just tremendous confidence in its powers of intellectual understanding and superiority to every other form of cognition in all previous eras, cultures, religions, etc. And even the sense of the planet, the Earth, at first is now moving into the divine realms, as if the Earth is moving where it used to be sacrosanct and the Earth used to be the imperfect realm. As Sean has emphasized, quoting Kepler, the Earth is seen as a stella nobilis, a noble star, and so this is the great breakthrough. But the great modern paradox is that that sets in motion while the Platonic divine cosmic mind, as it were, comes right into the modern mind. Michelangelo's painting of God touching atoms, like that's happening right at the same moment. The Copernican revolution is happening, and it's just this fantastic moment of divine illumination. But that sets in motion the disenchantment of the universe, because it's out of the Copernican revolution that the Cartesian and Galileo, Queen, they basically are able to come up with the new physics that is able to explain the movements of the moving Earth. It's a mechanistic cosmos, and what happens is that all the previous, many other things were also going into this, the Reformation and its disenchantment of the world, etc. But the Renaissance sense of human power, of creative poiesis. But the outcome of all this was that the human being, in some sense, it gets raised to just tremendous sense of its own power. And instead of the original feeling of identifying with the divine solar logos, there is a feeling of identifying itself as the divine solar logos. It's the highest good around. It's the summum bonum. It's the most powerful form of purposeful conscious intelligence in the known universe. And the rest of the world gets, the whole anima mundi gets pulled out. Now, what this, the positive side of this, just about 5 more minutes, is that okay?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to donate 10 minutes to my colleague from Marin.
It's very kind of you, Senator Swimme. I'm glad we're in the same party. This produces, Jake and I are going to be doing a whole course on this in about a year from now, so I'll just say in like a sentence, it can't do justice to it, but as we're doing a course on the evolution of the modern self, and particularly using the work of Charles Taylor for this purpose. But the basic idea is that this internalization of cosmic and divine intelligence and agency, including the moral agency, into the human being that is emerging out of the scientific revolution and the Reformation and getting extrapolated out of the cosmos and the earth and and more identifying it with the sun, as it were, over the earth, the sun of brilliant rational insight that the Enlightenment illuminates the whole world with its cognitive capacities. That also permits a sense of moral self-responsibility, and the internalization of moral and spiritual resources creates, instead of being more intertwined with cosmic determinisms, whether it was the astral powers that were determining our fate, which continued right into the medieval period. I should point out that in the Renaissance, to a great extent, this was very much, that Axial was very present in the medieval period too. Think of the great cathedrals and how simultaneously theological and astrological they were. If you go to Chartres, for example, and how those subjects were taught at the universities, etc. But with the modern, you break out of those cosmic determinisms, the astral powers. You break out of and you also you've disenchanted the primal world. You're no longer subject to these, the haunted forest or in the negative form that the modern mind characterizes the primal mind, superstitious, projecting its shadow all over the place, etc., its fears. And you also break out of the sense of God's power over the human being. There's more and more sense that we're on our own here, and we can determine our own fate, and our sense of what is good can be, we can direct our lives according to that, rather than what the church says, what the king, the sacred right, divine right of kings says, what the society says. Every individual can be morally and intellectually self-responsible. We all have this in us. Now, that's a fruit of this disenchantment. It comes out of that, and it's precious to us at the same time as we are aware of the great shadow of the hubris of objectifying the universe, the ecological catastrophe, the state of alienation, etc. Now, finally, there's the postmodern sense. Just out of curiosity, were you able to get that little 2-minute clip working with sound? No. Okay. So there's a great descent. We all know we're in a descent right now, and the descent takes many forms. But you can let me just give you here's Nietzsche. Since Copernicus, man seems to have stumbled onto an inclined plane. He is now rolling faster and faster away from the center. Whither into nothingness, into the penetrating feeling of who gave, and then elsewhere he writes, who gave us a sponge to wipe away the entire horizon? What were we doing when we unchained this earth from its sun? He's using this Copernican imagery? Are we not plunging continually? Is there still any up or down? Do we not feel the breath of empty space? Has it not become colder? Is not night closing in on us? I could give you, those of you who have studied with me know that we could draw on all these other people who capture this sense of the decentered, dethronement, alienation, Freud's 3 wounding blows, you know, with Copernicus, Darwin, depth psychology, etc. But what I want to point out is that with the I'm going to have to really compress here, but with the let me just show you what this postmodern, because it really is a new sensibility, fundamentally different than the modern. And in some ways, it's the perfect polarity to the axial, even as it's especially connected to this and to the to the modern. It goes out of the modern. It's hyper reflexive, but it is also and focused on emancipation and so forth. But it is also very connected to the primal. That it is that, in a sense, I put here in a kind of mandala-like form. So that this very tiny decentered self, part of postmodernity is seeing that our knowledge is projected from within. We don't really see the real world on its own terms. We're always subjectively shaping it, and even that the world in turn is the reality that we create through our cognitive structures and so forth, creates a kind of feedback loop. But also part of postmodernity is the multiculturalism of it and the breaking out of the patriarchal superiority and separation of the modern and axial, with a sense of multiple perspectives, centers, and recognizing the nobility of other cultural perspectives and epochs, like the primal, the shamanic traditions, etc. And so there's a kind of some worldviews that we shape the world with are disenchanted, some are enchanted, and we have agency to some extent in which way these go. We help select our world and worldview. And there's a kind of powerful question mark. There's also, in other words, indeterminacy, uncertainty. We're also facing planetary mortality. We're facing this whole crucible of postmodern initiation, in a sense, where we are having to face our shadows, death, fallibility, and the whole separation from the rest of the universe. And so the consequence of all this is that the postmodern also represents, I think, a great morally consequential moment, which the decentering of the cosmos, of the human being within the cosmos, has played a key role in. Just as it does anytime when we each go through our own private, ego deaths and loss and breaking out of a previous structure, and we have to go through that loss in order to open up to a different sense of who we are. And what I believe in a sense, here's the center, and part of this is the center cannot hold. This is the Yeats moment, in the second coming. But we are now, I think, coming through a moral crucible and a cosmic crucible, cosmological, etc., that can make possible a participatory relationship with the larger cosmos that would be co-creatively depending on our autonomy at the same time, and recognizing that we are embedded in the whole, and that our cosmic, that our imagination, our intelligence, our creativity, our moral passions are the universe's intelligence and creativity and passions at work in us and through us, that we were forged in some sense in our relationship to the stars at each stage to become potentially partners in a larger sense of the, what we could call a cosmo-theanthropic reality. And so I'll just end by saying one more thing. The thing that we were going to show up here was that these this thing about how the stars are not visible at night from the cities, and how that, what that does in occluding us, eclipsing our awareness of the larger cosmos, and how that is the bright light of our cities and of the modern rational mind has in some sense negated the vast sublime starry night. And that too, that darkness is also an essential part of this moral spiritual transformation. John of the Cross talks about how the divine withdraws from our consciousness in order to put us through the dying to the old person, the old identity, to be born anew. So the stars over 15 billion years have evolved us so that the universe's wonder at the monuments of its own magnificence, that's another Yeats quote, dwells within our own experience. I think the stars lead us subtly in our relationship to the stars, because we're not separate from the stars. We are the stars in human form, as Brian has helped us all see. The stars lead us subtly, complexly, but ultimately, I believe, to the good, like the Platonic good, capital G, which is always evolving in its self-disclosure to us and through us. So that the stars, as transcendent, as numinous, as eternal, or rather timeless in relative to human time, they evoke our wonder, our awe, our admiration, and intimation of the infinite. And in this sense, I think we can say, as has been said before, the stars lead us home. And this is true in many senses, more ways than I can articulate tonight, and in more ways, I think, than any of us probably can know. I think that the stars lead us home. But two of the ways we can articulate have been explored here in PCC for 25 years. One of them is archetypal cosmology, and the other is that evolutionary cosmology with its soul-imbued sense of wonder in both senses, the scientific and the numinous, that has been eloquently taught by Brian Swimme, to whom I now hand over the podium.
So I'm going to start with the last line that Rick gave, which to connect it all up, that our moral sense is the universe's, and We have been forged by the stars to become a cosmotheanthropic reality. So those two ideas, but especially this one, that our moral sense is the universes. I love that. Love that Rick. I love everything about your talk. Obviously, all these years we've been thinking about this together, but by bringing the moral in, it identifies what we need to be thinking about. I've been thinking about this talk for a while because I always loved to dialogue with Rick and to present these ideas here in the philosophy, cosmology, and consciousness context. And so as I thought about this, and I was sort of noticing also my emotional mood throughout, and it was largely one of misery. And I thought about that, and I thought, should I tell them that? You know, and I thought it'd be so out of character for me to talk about how miserable I am. Right? And then I this was in the bathtub, and I thought, why is it so hard? You know, why is it so hard? And then as I said that to myself, I thought, Brian, don't try to answer big questions like that. Try to focus on what you know. But so I don't have an answer, but I just wanted to bring it up. It's just so hard. I remember when I was younger, I was just so overwhelmed by the nuclear buildup. And I just thought, you know, if we could just stop building ICBMs and threatening mutual destruction of the world, I could really enjoy my life. If we could just stop it, you know. And then, so I lived with this kind of semi-anxiety and misery and joy. I mean, it was all mixed together, all the way up to 1989. And God, it was over. It was over. Now we could really have fun. I remember I ran outside and just rolled around on the grass. It was like didn't have to worry about that anymore, you know. And 3 weeks later, I had the same miserable experience of the things we do to each other, and it's just so horrible. And so I bring this all up mainly to say that I think there's something extremely important about connecting our work to the catastrophe of our time. And it doesn't matter what time we're talking about. And it could be the Middle Ages, you know, it could anywhere, no matter where we are, there are catastrophic things taking place. And if our thinking is not addressing that, then probably we are hiding in some kind of ideology that makes us feel good. You know, so like let's bring these together. So we live in a time when we're ruining the planet Earth with tremendous intelligence and power. Now, does anybody want to think about this? No, we don't want to. We don't, right? I want a glass of wine, all right? I want to watch Suits on TV. I want to do anything but think about this. But somehow or another, we have to find the moral strength to take it in and not be paralyzed by it, not give up, but find some way to address this, that we live on a ruined planet. It's not going to be ruined in the future. It's already ruined, and it's going to continue. And so what do we do about that? So I just think it's extremely important to live in a world that is clear about the difficulties. And that's one of the reasons why I so appreciate Sean Kelly. Sean and his teacher, Joanna Macy, will never allow themselves to be lulled into a feel-good pretense about our moment. And in other words, we rely upon one another to carry the whole together. And so I hope that our thinking here tonight, that Rick and I and you together, that our thinking here tonight is going to make a difference to our situation. That's sort of my hope. So I'm up here praying now this might happen. Okay, that's enough. So I wanted now to tell you, I thought, okay, next point is to talk about, so to pick up on Rick's fabulous story about the way in which the stars have been fundamental to our in his words, our cognition, developing our cognition and understanding the moral depths of the world, fundamentals. I'm going to start with that and tell you some things about the universe. Here it is. Now, this is something that no previous people knew. I'm about to tell you something. It's new. So we're thrown into the same struggle that the different humans Rick was talking about entered into. They wondered about the stars, and through that, they found their way forward. So here we are. We're doing the exact same thing with new knowledge. Every era has new knowledge. The last one that Rick was talking about was Kepler and Copernicus. Wow, that brought people out of a whole era. So here's my way of beginning this movement. To compare the Earth, so the Earth to the sun. That some Greeks thought that the sun was the same size as a warrior's shield. The sun. It was real bright, like a warrior's shield, big, it was bright. And now we know something. We know that actually the sun is 1,000,000 times bigger than the Earth. So here's Earth, 1,000,000 Earths to fill up the sun. I just want to dwell on that for a second. So we get a sense of the size, the magnitude of the sun. It's 1,000,000 times bigger. Now another star. YV Canis Majoris, right? I'd like to introduce you to YV Canis Majoris. Friends, here's Canis Majoris. Are ready? Here we go. So I have the Earth right here. 1,000,000 times larger as the sun. Now we go to YV Canis Majoris. 9 billion sun to fill it up. 9 billion. Do you know how small the sun has just become compared to YV Canis Majoris? Can you even see the Earth? It has disappeared from our sight. It's so tiny. YV and the sun are just 2 of the 300 billion stars of the Milky Way galaxy. Now you might be depressed by that. I find it uplifting. This little planet that we've ruined, come on, big deal. 200, 300, 400 billion stars. Hey, that's just the Milky Way galaxy. Are you ready for this next one? We have counted 2 trillion galaxies. 2 trillion. We can't even imagine how tiny we are. Does it make you feel insignificant? Well, I can deal with that a little bit later, but maybe it's good to feel insignificant. Maybe that's part of what we have to do. I think that that one of our challenges right now, in terms of the stars moving to London, is to take in the vastness. God, I mean, like, you know, in classical times, the humans thought that the stars were close enough to, if you shouted, you hear the echo. I mean, they still had difficulties, you know, they probably had taxes to pay, and they probably didn't like each other, but still. That was the horizon. Little tiny cozy universe. We have not that. We've got this thing that just pulverizes us. If you think about it, I mean, I will go out at night and reflect on these things, and I can't even breathe after a certain. And I think, but that's somehow or other, that is what is supposed to happen right now. So that is one way to think about the universe. And I want to give you a few more things that we've learned like this that we have to wonder over, all right? And the phrase that captures this in general is that we have discovered a time developmental universe. That's the phrase that captures what is new about our moment. The time developmental universe. The vastness of the size and so forth, yeah, that's new. But that isn't the qualitative difference. So what we've learned is this. These galaxies that we've just discovered are all moving away from us. They're all moving away. And we can measure the movement. We can calculate how long it's taken for them to move apart. And we arrive at an understanding that the universe that we can see and measure and so forth, like Rick was talking about, that has developed our cognitive abilities to grasp it, is 14 billion years old. Furthermore, we can actually interact with elements from the beginning of this time. We can interact with them. We can measure them. So we know that 14 billion years ago, the universe that we can see was the size of an apple seed. A little metaphor there, seed, you know. But I mean, the point is, it was tiny. Now you can go further, and like theoretically, we can see, we can imagine it, we can calculate it theoretically as smaller than an atom. So we have this bizarre situation of a vastness that came out of a very tiny, tiny place. We know then that to exist, to be a human, is to be inside of a developing reality. This is what the phrase means, time developmental universe. We are inside this ongoing developing reality. And it has some strange features. I'm going to give a couple of them and then work towards that statement that Rick made. All right? So what are two of the strange things? One is every place in the universe is at the center of the universe. It's really bizarre. Okay, here we go. I'm going to give you the evidence. You ready? Yeah, just bring it together. Focus. It's all going to go away in a couple minutes. I just need your attention. We can detect light from the beginning of time. Almost the origin of the universe, not quite. All right? So this is the part that's strange. So we see, if we look in this direction, we see light that comes from billions of light years away. And we are looking then, we're detecting, we're interacting with the light from near the origin of the universe. So then we think, okay, then if you want to know what the origin of the universe is, you trace back. Let me just say this. If we look out, if you look out, we see light that is traveling, has been traveling for 100 million years. And we're looking at a galaxy, say. I'm looking at a galaxy that's 100 million light years away. So I'm looking at light that took 100 million years to get here, right? Am I seeing the galaxy? No, I'm not seeing the galaxy. What am I seeing?
The past.
I'm seeing the past. I'm seeing the galaxy as it was 100 million years ago. Great. So that's the one difficult thing. When we look out, we're seeing things as they were in the past. I look out 100 million years ago, I'm seeing what the galaxy was like 100 million years ago. I go out to 1 billion years, billion light years. I'm looking at galaxies 1 billion years ago. When I get out to 12.5 billion light years, there aren't any galaxies. There are none. No matter what direction I look. I just said there are 2 trillion galaxies, but none of them are 12.5 billion light years away, apparently. What have I discovered? Pardon me?
No galaxies before 12.
The beginning of time.
Thank you, Professor Kelly. You just cheered me up. That means that if I'm looking back 12.5 billion years, there are no galaxies then. They haven't formed. Do you see the point? So you go back far enough, you get to a point before there are any galaxies. We go further. We get to light that has traveled 14 billion years. And that's what we say is near the beginning of the universe. To be precise, it's 380,000 years after the birth of the universe. But don't get hung up on the numbers and technicalities. If you look back far enough, you're seeing to the time before there were galaxies. Now here's the bizarre thing. Ready? Let's try it. That light that comes from way the hell out there actually has its origin right here. Okay, now if you understood that quickly, either you spent a lot of time thinking about this, or you're wrong. This is completely bizarre. What do you mean light from 14 billion light years away originated here? Ready for the explanation? Here it is. Universe begins 14 billion years ago, right here. And so this, I'll take a point that's right next to me, like an inch away. And so in our understanding, in the cognitive development that Rick was talking about, that has come about as we've studied the stars, we have put together, we've modeled the universe in the states. At the beginning, the expansion of the universe is faster than the speed of light. Einstein's theory says nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. There's no traveling taking place here. This is the hard part. What is happening is that space is emerging into existence. Space is emerging. That is why the points are moving apart. They are not moving through space. Space is emerging between the points. The word for this is spatiation. I made that up. So now just imagine, okay, so here's Brian right here. I just said everything emerged from this point. Here he is right here, here's Brian. I'm at a point 2 inches away, and I'm at the birth of the universe. And so light is emerging from me in all directions, right? All directions, including this little directions from here to here. So here. Here's the podium at the center of the universe. And so a photon takes off from me at 186,000 miles a second, right? That's the speed of light. But I'm moving this way 1,000 times faster than the speed of light. So here's the photon leaving, right? Okay, I'm gonna slow it down. I'm just gonna watch it. Moving like this. This is the kinesthetic part of my presentation. Multimodal here at CIS. Okay, so here comes the photon. And if I was just standing here, it would just get there after, a little tiny bit of time. But I'm moving. So it's coming off. See? Was that great? It moved away from me at the speed of light. What do you mean you're shaking your head? No. Okay, great. Good start. So it's moving away from me at the speed of light, but the universe is expanding fast from the speed of light. You can ask any observational cosmologist, mathematical cosmologist on the planet, they all agree at this point. Don't talk to a normal physicist, they don't know about it. You get a lot of arguments, and no, you can't go fast at the speed of light. I'm not saying that. The universe is expanding fast at the speed of light. So, but what has also happened is that as the universe expands, the gravitational attraction is slowing down the expansion. That actually happens for the first 9 billion years. Slowing down the expansion. So what happens then? After a while, the speed of light is faster than the expansion. You see? And so it starts to, even though the expansion continues, it actually makes its way back here. And so here I am, I'm Edwin Hubble, I got my telescope, Mount Wilson, I'm looking out, I go, oh my God, wow, here comes some light from 14 billion light years away. Its origin point was an inch away from you. I like the way you're going no now. Unbelievable. Like, whoa. Yeah, exactly. If it was easy to understand, it would be a waste of your time. Because the form of consciousness that we have, as Rick was saying, is what is causing the destruction. You see, so we need this hard practice of breaking down a form of consciousness so another form can come in. So we live in a universe where every point in the universe is at the center. I have utterly no idea why I said any of that. I'm just kidding. I do know, but how much should I just look this over? Okay, here we go. So I'm just going to give you one more fact, and I'm going to summarize the whole thing, all right? And then we will deconstruct each other. Okay, ready? The last thing is this. So the universe, it's blossoming forth, right? And the amazing thing is that it's doing this in a way that enables its potentiality to unfurl. I mean, clearly, look what happened. But one of the truly stunning discoveries, like way beyond the size, Canis Majoris, way beyond that. One of the truly stunning discoveries is that it seems to be the case that from the beginning, the universe knew what it was about. Now, the word "knew" has to be put in major quotation marks. Like major "knew," right? But just to give you one example, a star that's 8 times the size of our sun or larger will, in the course of its development, create all the elements that we know of. Supernova explosion disperses the elements, enabling planets and life to emerge. So, but here's the bizarre thing. The relationship of the fundamental forces has an elegance we cannot understand. So we have electricity and magnetism. We have gravitational interaction. We have the weak nuclear interaction and the strong nuclear. Those are the four forces. The weak nuclear is essential for a supernova. If you altered the weak nuclear interaction just a little bit, there would be no supernovas. There'd be no life. How is it? How is it? How is this exquisite order possible? Well, I think in this sense, we are touching upon a universe that has agency as a whole. One of the things that Rick was talking about. We're touching upon the idea of the whole being real and not just a conglomeration of parts. The universe is about life and mind in a way that we don't fully understand. But we will, I do believe we will understand it. But so that I just gave you one example. The weak nuclear and supernovas. So when you go out, when you walk, well, next time you can look up at the night sky. When you look up and you're looking at the stars, we really are the first people to know empirically that what we're looking at gave birth to us. We know that empirically. I don't want to put down anybody in the past. I'm just saying this is part of the adventure of being human. We know the stars gave birth to us. They gave birth to the consciousness we are using. To know they gave birth to us. It seems to be the case that the very structure of the universe is such that it would give birth to beings that would know the structure of the universe. We can summarize this phrase in different, we can summarize this situation in different ways. Here's one way. When we look out, we see that which constructed the within to understand the without. That's one way to understand. Here's another one. When we look out, we are looking at that which is looking. We've made that breakthrough in understanding. What we know is what is knowing. We have come to know what is knowing. So this form of consciousness is struggling to find a stable existence as humans. Maybe there are different forms of consciousness, but when we look at each other, we're looking at that which constructed us. We've discovered the mutual, unitive, co-creative, evolutionary nature of our lives, of existence. And our challenge is to find a way, like I say, to stabilize this, to make it ongoing, we don't know what it means to be human. We're discovering what it means to be human. This is the one way in which humanity is coming forth. That is our gathering in the philosophy, cosmology, and consciousness community is an exploration of the form of consciousness that the universe knew from the beginning would come forth. There are nodes around the planet that are exploring this. We're exploring other things here as well, but this is one of them. I have an image for you. It came to me in the bathtub when I was thinking about all this. Here's the image. the vastness of the universe, the vastness, all the way back 14 billion years, can be thought of as a giant wax candle. And human consciousness is the flickering flame of the wick. To feel that our consciousness is actually the work of 14 billion years of creativity. That's the form of consciousness that we are struggling to bring forth. And our task is to create a civilization that's in alignment with that form of mutuality. So Rick, some of these things connected with what you were saying. Maybe we should talk about some of the things that are similar and some of the things that are different. Do you want to join me up here? I mean,
Well, first, let's applaud you.
oh.
We put some chairs and take the podium away?
Yeah, that would be great.
Well, we just sit in front. We have to take it away, do we?
What I'm impressed by as we both kind of came into tonight's task is how from the first moment are having to, and this is kind of the poignancy, the enormous spiritual challenge that every person in this room feels of holding at the same time the wonder of the cosmos and of the cosmotheanthropic experiment that has brought forth this consciousness that is reflecting back on the whole that it is an expression of, that it is. To hold that at the same time as holding the catastrophe of the planet right now, and that it is human caused, and that our country and the powers that are most in the ascendant right now in our country are in certain ways doing the most to accelerate that catastrophe. That's the almost impossible moral, spiritual, and cognitive challenge that we all face. And maybe I'll just say one thing about how I try to hold that together. And I have some thoughts about how you were synthesizing those simultaneous stuff. I would love to know more. In my own mind, this kind of sloppy diagram up there. I should have the lovely one that you for me that does this more elegantly. But if I were to summarize this in relationship to the catastrophe, it's that I would ask, like, at each stage of these great kind of cognitive, cosmological shifts and cultural shifts, where were the moral, spiritual sources experienced? And in the primal worldview, they were experienced in the ensouled land that was simultaneously, it was the ancestors and spirits were there land, in the water, in the wind, in the earth in a very local way, right there, kind of a local Gaia. Ubayati is that great term, the saturated, soul-saturated bareness of the primal experience. And then for the archaic, its experiences in it's moving up. It's experienced in the heavens, in the astral powers, the stars and planets, and in the gods, and in the god humans that the top of the pyramid represents, the pharaoh, the king. Then it's experienced in the utter transcendent, the supercosmic, as well as the cosmic order, but even the supercosmic. Then each one growing from the next in a very carefully calibrated evolution. Then it's experienced as inside the human. And we all carry that in us. We're all moderns in a postmodern context. And then in the postmodern, where the moral spiritual sources experienced. And suddenly everything kind of is getting pulverized, to use your term. We've gone through this great, what do we call it? The great turning, the great unraveling, as Sean calls it. I want to think of it as a great descent. It's a descent into the underworld of the unconscious, the deep psyche, but into deep space, deep time, deep uncertainty, the deep darkness of our not knowing. I mean, in many ways, you emphasize what we know as never before, but the more we know, as Edgar Morin says, the more we realize we don't know. The penumbra of our ignorance keeps expanding with our increased light of knowledge. And so in some ways, the moral spiritual sources are now experienced, first of all, in no longer just the human. How many people now take spiritual and moral nourishment from the redwood trees and from the whales and animals and from the cosmos, and also they no longer reside just in like the modern human. In fact, modern man, it's now broken out of the genders, multiple species. It's gotten democratized, and also multiple perspectives and cultural perspectives can be simultaneously seen. This has never before happened. Simultaneously, we can experience multiple perspectives. We all have them going on in us, right? It's this minute. Cultural, religious, scientific. We're all, most of us here, we're all Buddhist, we're all Christian, we're all Jewish. It's all streaming through us. We're all shamanic, indigenous, goddess worshiping, nature mystics. And atheists, very important, very important. That's all in us. And never before have multiple perspectives been able to be recognized as simultaneously valid and simultaneously englobing each other. That's amazing. But we can look within one cosmos, as it were, cosmology, etc., and see. So, and then we can see it from another perspective, and then that other one is within the other.
Yeah.
And those are simultaneously valid, and there's a lot of those going on inside each of us, and then there's all of us are in relationship, etc. So, and then there's also the confrontation with the shadow, and the shadow that's part of the great depth psychology descent, is that we're recognizing that shadow, that moral shadow that our modern consciousness has, in its bright light, has created with the catastrophe that is connected to that shadow, ecological, spiritual catastrophe, cultural. Okay, so where I see a potential opening towards being able to hold this tension of opposites that runs right through PCC, that we are simultaneously intended by the cosmos in some way, and at the same time crashing the Cenozoic era on our precious Earth. That contradiction, that tension of opposites, we're all holding. And the only way, this is Jung and Hegel and William Blake's great insight, is just you hold that tension of opposites and then something can happen if you hold it. That some divine third, something opens up that couldn't have happened unless you held the tension that seemed to be irrefutably contradictory. And I think that by seeing this pulverization and dethronement and decentering that we both have been talking about, that represents in some sense a kind of spiritual initiatory crucible that I believe the cosmos intended. I don't know where it's going. I don't know. I think there's many more dimensions of being than I'm seeing right now. I think there's all sorts of ways in which surprising, awesome, wondrous transformations, births out of deaths can happen. And I don't pretend to know, but I do sense that there is an arc of the moral universe, and that the universe is moral, as well as being a universe, and that it's somehow working through us, and in some sense our agency is playing a crucial participatory role in it, and that can only be played by going through this assimilation of the catastrophe that we are undergoing, and that's kind of the best I can do. That kind of combines these.
Yeah.
I'm wanting to call from you, because I know you live with this daily. I think the very first time I saw you in 1988, we were at that Esalen philosophy conference, I got that simultaneous sense of this is a person whose scientific cosmology is numinous through and through, and he's also deeply conscious of the catastrophe that is starting to emerge, much more now than then, but obviously it was already happening. And that misery that you started your talk with, and the dazzling vistas that you opened up to us, I'm wanting to see how you integrate those or hold them simultaneously.
I guess I mean, when we look at taking the universe, it just seems to be the case that the deep creativity always involves annihilation. You know, so I guess the one thing I might say that I sort of offer as help would be that that with some annihilations, there's a creative remnant. That's the phrase. I don't know where I got that, but
It sounds like something out of Toynbee.
yeah, the creative minority.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the state and the state's disaster.
I mean, the whole idea of just everything is destroyed, but there's a little tiny little bit left. And that becomes so crucial. I mean, the most famous example would be the last mass extinction. You have this, if you're doing a flyby on planet Earth, and you saw all these amazing creatures dying forever, right? And then you have the little tree shoot, the little mouse, and who would guess that would grow into all the mammals? So that's sort of what I do with the deep miserable situation we're in. I sort of keep looking for
That makes perfect sense to me because, I mean, in some way, as you know, inspired by you and other things that have happened in the last 5 years of my own work, as you know, I've really gotten into studying Earth evolution, animal, plant, biological evolution, the last 500 million years in real detail. And it's just overwhelming to me that these series of mass extinctions have happened that were, the very definition of catastrophe. And yet, out of every one, things became richer, more splendid. And that's like so much of the mammalian, all those birds, that didn't exist until after the Mesozoic began, out of a mass extinction. So, and it perfectly parallels what I have been drawing on, where you go with the recognition that annihilation seems to be essential to the cosmic creative process. And so far, it's been pretty impressive. Is it likely that on this one tiny little, vanishingly small, insignificant planet that's going to be, that in some sense that principle will be forever in some fundamental way overwhelmed by our stupidity? I don't think so. And so where I'm going with this is that I'm thinking in my what I go to is more the depth psychology, psychospiritual annihilation that is part of the death rebirth process, so that the very moment when I have lost, I've seen what seems to be complete annihilation, loss, really nothing positive. That's what opens up to the most beautiful things I've ever experienced in my life. And over again, that miraculous transformation in the psycho-spiritual realm parallels the cosmic Gaian evolutionary annihilation and rebirth that you have just alluded to. And in that sense, cosmos and psyche give us some grounds for thinking that at some level, nothing is lost. Nothing's at some level, much is lost, and yet it reappears in new ways. And I think the materialistic worldview might not give that possibility. But our multidimensional perspective does give that possibility.
Yeah, that's nice. I maybe just I'm gonna say one last name
Yeah.
before you sort of open it up.
Yeah.
And that would be, I guess in a certain sense, I wanted to address about this. And and this really comes from Thomas Berry. He we didn't argue very much, but we did a couple times, and one was one was when he basically made it clear to me that I didn't realize how deeply I was colonized by industrial consciousness. Now, the phrase industrial consciousness is a phrase I use. You can put in there white supremacy, you can put in there a whole bunch of other phrases, but it was really important for me. And I'm just handing it on to you. That I didn't realize how much, going depth psychology, I didn't realize how deep I was truly the enemy, right? And so one of the really great things about living in a time when we're destroying Earth is that you can use the destruction to destroy the layers of colonization that have taken place. You can use it. Just allow it to invade you and to destroy all of those subtle perspectives, assumptions, commitments. Just let it completely hollow you out. And then that's the first thing. Really, it helped me a lot. The second thing is to realize that we live on the edge of a cliff. There could be a massive destruction at any moment, which would eliminate us, our lives. So why waste your time doing the second or third thing that matters to you? There's no reason for it. We're living at a time of imminent disaster. It might not happen, but if you can make real the possibility of a massive ecological collapse, you can do what you were here to do. You can find the courage to be who you are. So I offer that up. Another way to say it on a lower level is saying, don't take a course ever for a degree. Choose the courses that really, really matter to you. That's all that matters. Should we open it up?
Please, yeah, let's.
Ashton, could you open it up?
Yeah, any questions?
Or comments,
Oh, comments.
or insights?
Yeah.
Well, I especially want insights. Help. Ask them for help.
Yeah, can you give me some help?
Hello? Hello? Can you speak loud?
It's on.
I think it's nice.
Hello. Thank
Hello.
you for your talk. It was very nice and I loved your chat with each other. So I guess my question is twofold. And I guess both of you could answer part of it or all of it or what have you. Brian, so you were talking about how you walk outside and you just ponder about these things and it puts you in just a state like you can't even breathe. There is such a magnitude of, the infinite once we really start to expand or touch into our naturally expanding process into the universe and really grok what that totally means. And so I guess towards you, my question is, do you personally have any practices for kind of weaning ourselves back into the infinite and this awareness of ourselves as that? Because for me, I can understand, I can wrap my head around it, but bringing it down into an actual realized truth in my being seems to be a different process that might take parts, without entire obliteration, which I don't know, you might be about. And Richard, I was wondering if you had any practices or methods that we, as these kind of conscious entities with our own feedback loops, creating our own worlds, and then in conjunction with that expanding process, how these worlds actually expand into each other in a kind of compatible way, because that's what we're trying to work towards here, that kind of solidarity in oneself, creating that world, but then it's embedded with this other world.
Let me go first, because I can answer really quickly. My practice is writing. Right. I'm not leaving. Rick,
Could you get me some water too?
I would love to.
I was just gonna ask somebody to bring me some.
oh, I felt it, I felt it.
Nice. So at different times in my life, different practices have been more crucial for me, but all of them continue to be in one way or another. But listing them in the most, no, I'm not going to put them in rank them because each one has its own. But one is, I used to say, this is after my 20s, there's the two ways of really pushing that kind of, accelerating, demanding that kind of intense transformational process. The two practices that I found were the most, the uppermost in my life were I go psychedelic sessions and being a parent. Those two outranked everything. And I would then, in terms of the continuing, since this is just a personal thing, just personal practice, continue to be a wider range of psychedelics, certainly, but also the wider range of relationships. Every day, the relationships are so big. Being present for each moment as much as I can be, like, we've talked about it in our radical mytho speculation class. It's like being present for seeing the tree, seeing the squirrel in a way that I'd never seen before, just like being able to recognize that that's me, that tetrapod in squirrel form, that's me, the tree, leaves aspiring, the branches going higher, pulling in the sun, but also keeping its roots. And then really the most, where I feel most zeroed in right now kind of is what Brian's talking about. It's a kind of writing, thinking, research. It's just, I somehow, something over the last 5 years is I feel like living inside me, growing inside me, that I need to give all my, might be 1 hour a day, but my total attention to, and I feel so centered cosmically by it that it nourishes me for everything else that's required by life. So those are the big ones for, archetypal cosmology, astrology, paying attention to these astral powers that these archaic guys, high priests and different diviners saw. That's been huge. I mean, what kind of a cosmos would set up a universe, a solar system, and human history in which every individual, as well as the great collective movements of civilizations, are just so elegantly correlated. The archetypal movements of and patterns of human experience are so elegantly correlated with the movements of the planets in such an enriching, aesthetic, intellectual way that it's like, what universe would do that that didn't care about the Earth and about human beings on it? This is a universe that cares. It cares, and it's pouring in, it's bathing our planet and my life, as well as every individual life that I happen to look at their transits and their birth chart and see how they are expressing these great archetypal gods and goddesses in their lives. It fills me with wonder every day. And I feel the cosmic love and care and intelligence that is just pouring in on our Earth and on every individual and moment. That's a big one for me.
So, way in the back.
Thank you both.
You're welcome.
Really, really appreciate it. So many jewels. This is for Brian. It's my greed because I actually feel a little shy. I barely got it, but I was almost crying. Tears were coming to my eyes when you were describing the supernova and using it as a beautiful illustration of how intelligence or the consciousness of the universe knew from the beginning by when it's birthing, giving forth these elements that end up creating everything and why we're here. And I just wanted, you were saying something about a weak asteroid, I think. You said something about, was that it, a weak asteroid?
The weak nuclear force.
The weak
Nuclear force. Radioactivity.
Okay, I just wanted to hear a little bit more about that because there's something there that I just want, if you could share a little bit more, explain that, because I heard you saying that that was the condition necessary for that supernova.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let me jump to the strong nuclear because it's quicker to explain. Here we go. Strong nuclear. Strong nuclear is the bond between a proton and a proton, or a proton and a neutron. It's what holds together the nuclei of the atoms. So, right, we're composed of atoms, and all the protons have positive charge. They repel each other electrically. The strong nuclear holds it all together, right? Well, I just love this image. I mean, I was an adolescent when I learned this, so you have to forgive me, but still, it's so interesting that if you have a light switch and you can just flick it and turn off the strong nuclear just for a second, we would all just turn into dust, because all the nuclei in our bodies would blow apart. Look, it's not going to happen. So it's just a way of understanding what's taking place second by second, right? So that it's a force that's happening. It's out in the stars, but it's right here, right? It's happening, moment by moment by moment. If that force were changed by 2%, we've done the mathematics. If you change the force by 2%, there would be no stars. No long burning stars. So just an alteration of that amount. Does that make sense to you? If you made the strong nuclear 2% stronger, 2% weaker, we would be in a universe without supernovas. There wouldn't be life in mind. So it means, this goes back to what Rick was just saying. There's a way in which we live in a universe that has this dimension of, the human word for it is care, right? But there'd be different ways of talking about it scientifically, although care is a great word. And that would be one out of, there are many, many, many examples like that. It has stupefied scientists. And that we have failed to understand this because of the prior commitment that Rick was talking about. The commitment of modern science that the universe as a whole is not an agent. There's another hand.
Good evening, and thank you so much.
So welcome.
So a couple of thoughts or comments, some images that came to mind. Like, I really loved how you were talking about how the seed of the universe knew, or had that knowing of what it would become and like its developmental trajectory. And then it came to me the idea of like how on that maybe more microcosmic scale, how the seed of like an apple seed knows it's going to become an apple tree, and an apple or a watermelon seed knows that it's going to become a watermelon. You're like, how do these things know? And then they go through all these developmental phases where they sometimes don't look anything like like another phase. And how the universe is, or our comprehension is we're trying to get a grasp on maybe the seed of this universe that we don't even know all the phases that it's going through. But it's exciting to think that that the seeming chaos, but there's that order, and there's the blossoming and that whole process. And then what came up for me with Richard's diagrams is, I think it's because I'm a mom or whatever, but each phase, it just reminded me of, like humanity's consciousness or cognitive development, or not just humanity, but like, that whole sphere. It's kind of like that first one is, like the newborn child being immersed, and it's like feeling connected to, it doesn't have a sense of its separate self from the universe or from the parent or whatever. And then as it develops into being a little bit older, and it has like that the sense of self, but then that social, there's that connection. And then as it gets to there was like a Renaissance age, or where humanity was starting to feel like it was the disenchantment phase. It's almost kind of like the teenage, going through their rebellion, and sometimes going through very catastrophic, learning things the hard way, and then finally coming to that, so moving from dependence to extreme independence, then coming to that like interdependence, where it's like that multiplicity of awareness and realities, and that it's like this, the universe, the divine infinite plan or whatever has that
That's a lovely summary.
development
Yeah.
for human character or consciousness to mature. So
Ontogeny recapitulates.
yeah.
Phylogeny.
Thank you. That's lovely.
Thank you.
You said it more concisely than we did.
Yeah. We aspire to greater conciseness next time.
Thank you. Sandra!
Wait for the mic, right?
Is that Howie back there? Okay, you're in the dark, but Howie's next.
Sort of jumping off what you were
Saying, we
hear the word apocalyptic a lot these days, and it feels fitting to me with the smoke and everything else.
Feels faint?
No,
It feels apocalyptic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
fitting,
cutting
okay.
in and out. So, should I just yell?
Yeah, just yell.
Yeah, so the word apocalyptic, I hear it a lot. It comes out of me a lot. It feels really like it fits the times, but I'm curious, in the bigger picture, this is a huge question or just observation.
I suspect there are people through history, and Rudolf Steiner might be one of them, who saw and see.
This is
Maybe it's you, Sandra.
Maybe it's me.
What are you
Maybe
doing?
I'm static.
Electricity in your hand or something?
Yeah, it could be. I've been very zappy. But it feels as though what we're going through has been predicted not in the details, but in the big overarchingness of it. And you've both spoken about that in a certain way.
Did you mention Rudolf Steiner?
I did mention Rudolf
Yeah.
Steiner. He happens to be one who I feel had insight. There are many others.
Well, Robert
And
McDermott.
and the book of Revelation, I mean, the actual, what we read there about apocalypse, it feels like there's some kind of fitting, but it is all part, my faith is that it's all part of, and this is exactly what you've been saying. I say this to people all the time, and they look at me funny. I just know that we're onto something, and something is going to come. I have no idea how long it's going to take. This is all part of something bigger.
Yeah.
And I think people through the ages have kind of known that. And Rudolf Steiner might be one of them. So that's
Well,
not
I
really a
guess I
question,
was-
it's a big observation.
I hand this over to Rick. 'Cause-
I don't know if anything needs to be said.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's kind
Well,
of.
I mean, is that,
Yeah.
does that
sense
fit
of-
with how you see things, or that
Yes,
idea, that big idea?
That sense of unknowing, I mean, some of you were on the PCC chat, know I sent this thing out about how what you've described as it could be seen as a kind of faith, also a kind of hope. And I see those as, they're not just spiritual practices, but as metaphysical practices. And that we, through our aspiration for a good that transcends what even we can see as possible, and that a kind of loyalty to that plants a seed in the indeterminate future that can actually reach back into and pull the present towards itself.
Kind of teleologically, could you say? Kind of
Yeah,
pull us
except
toward
that
it?
I think that in a certain way, I do deeply believe that we are in an open universe. And that while there are there are larger dramas unfolding with a kind of fateful certainty, I also think that's true, but within that, there's also there's an indeterminacy, an openness that is depending on the creativity, that moment to moment, the creativity and level of courage, level of consciousness that we bring to this, level of caring for each other, for the future, for the seed that's in us, that's growing into whatever we're supposed to become. That caring, and that seed is the universe wanting to flower in the particular way that we are somehow intended to flower. But through that caring, we actually, in all those different ways, that actually plants a seed in that indeterminate future. And so we are playing, it takes courage, but it's not a courage that's just depending on us. It's a courage that's partly depending on us and partly depending on the whole that we're partly creating at the same time that we're working by means of. If you can get that kind of paradox. And so that's how I try to come to terms with this vast process that's bigger than us, and yet there's a precious pearl inside every one of us that we need to be loyal to, and that has been, in some sense, developed by the painstaking evolution that cosmically Brian just described, and humanly I described cultural evolution and so forth. So,
Howie,
I wanted to bring up, Carl Jung's distinction that he made between the hero and initiate. And I think this might play a role because I'm feeling, the hero and the initiate, the difference. And I get a feeling late that we're moving out of the hero archetype for sure, but the heroic savior, the strong man, the great manly, all this stuff is getting old. So I think, I'm wondering if you guys can articulate, if you would imagine, what does the initiate archetype look like? Because I feel like that's what we're trying to fill out with the cosmos in a way. And we don't want to do it too strong because that would be heroic again, and then we just make a mistake. So we're kind of not sure how to move with it, but there's a participatory sense of this initiate archetype that's trying to emerge. And I feel from what I hear you guys speak.
Well, Rick, we'll talk about the initiate, archetype.
Sure.
But I don't want to ban the hero archetype, but I remember going back to Thomas Berry one time. It was at CIS, a different building, but we were having a conversation and everybody was talking about the hero archetype and Odysseus and various humans and so forth. And then it came to Thomas's turn, and he said, "Do you hear that bird out there?" I said, "No, nobody heard the bird." He said, "That's the hero of our time." Meaning it was actually surviving in industrial society. It was heroic. It was a heroic life. Rick?
Yeah, Jung has so much. So Jung, this goes in. Can I just?
No, seriously,
This is a good sign that we're almost at the end. Yeah, Jung he's got so much wisdom in him, and I know what he means. I think I do. I believe, though, that the hero that he is saying needs to be transcended in some sense. It needs to that in a way has helped produce the crisis. Is a less evolved form of heroism, and that there is I think every one of us knows what a true hero is. A true heroism is, I think, every mother giving birth and caring daily for their child, giving their being, their body, their emotional care and everything. That's heroism being played out day after day. It's the hero at this nobler, deeper level is willing to realize themselves by giving their very being for the whole in one motion, and that can take a whole lifetime rather than one dramatic event, and that in that sense, the initiate is a form, but the evolved hero is an initiate, and that they become one. And in a sense, the solar hero and the great mother moon goddess, the sun and moon come together in that one, in that hieros gamos, that sacred marriage. So that bird is a hero. Every one of us is carrying, as Nietzsche says, I beg of you, my brothers and sisters, stay true to the hero in your souls. I think that's really important, but it's a deeper hero than John Wayne. Just who came to mind. Yeah. It's often a quiet heroism, an invisible heroism. It's a heroism that takes place in the 1,000 daily
demands and tasks and commitments that we are giving ourselves to. But that's, I think, this whole evolution here and that whole evolution of 14 billion years is a form of the great hero archetype unfolding, and it's preparing itself in a sense for the sacred marriage with the beloved. And maybe that's a good moment to end.
Especially with the beloved. It's got to be quick. You two.
All right, so I'm a counseling psychology student here, so I feel slightly like a fish out of water, trying to integrate all of this to what I'm learning in the therapy. So my question then is, to either of you, is there anything in your field that might indicate to you that the universe laments its own obliteration and evolution? Because in this seeking of therapy and nourishment and healing, you're noticing that the human condition really seeks witness. And if you're talking about the universe as an agent, as a whole, not as like this reduction of sum of parts, but like it's this whole thing, it's an agent that mirrors and reflects us. So is it just like this parent, or are we just some like bumbling infant, or what are your thoughts on that? I know it's not good.
I think that I wish I could do this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So. My 4 hours of sleep. That grieving, I think is a key part of the pulverizing, the annihilation, the great descent that we're going through. And just as we each have to go through that grieving for the suffering that we've caused others in our lives through our unconsciousness, or perhaps through a possession and state of malevolence. I mean, there are all sorts of ways in which people cause suffering. But that confrontation with our shadow, and then the grieving, the lamenting, for what's happening to the earth, for those who suffer. I mean, I can't keep up with what's demanded of me, but I aspire to open my heart in that direction. And I think the universe does grieve in the same way that the mystics talk about the divine suffers in us and grieves every loss. It's not there's the joyful mysteries, there's the sorrowful mysteries, and there are the glorious mysteries. And glorious mysteries require the sorrowful mysteries.
Hey, you get the last word.
Hey, it's not a very quick question.
No, don't say that. This is the culmination of our evening, May.
Okay, perfect. So I'm curious if it is the case that our modern industrial consciousness has created a society that has led to the ruin of our planet. If at the societal level we were to adopt this new framework for our existence, kind of grounded in the picture that you create of the universe and our existence as part of the universe, what do you envision that society to look like if we adopted that story?
It would be it would be a society that recognized creativity as an ultimate. And it would be a society in general that would be built for the enhancement and evocation of beauty. That was the best question of the night, May. That was supposed to be funny. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.